Hi everyone, we are carrying on with our Lichess speed run. These are my account CBC speed, and my opponent here is rated 814, which is probably more like 500, 600 in chess.com terms. So here we've got already a kind of a break from the norm, but this is a Scandinavian. It's a very normal opening, and this is going to invite Black's queen to come out into the board. I can then kick with tempo, bring one of the... Knight c3 is very obvious. I think a lot more kind of stronger players play knight f3. Oh! Well, this looks like some kind of funky gambit. So I'm going to take the second pawn on the premise that it's free stuff and it doesn't mess up my structure. Now if he recaptures with the pawn... Okay, so he's recaptured with the knight, that's fine. Yeah, if recapturing with the pawn would have given him an isolated pawn, which isn't great. So we want to develop. So I'm going to have to move another pawn in order to release my dark squared bishop. But I think right now this makes sense to develop my bishop with a pin. It's a genuine threat, it's a real threat, it's not meaningless. It means that this knight legally cannot move. It's in an absolute pin. And f5, now that's just plain weird. I do have a check here with a queen, but this pawn is defended by the bishop, so I don't want to do that because it breaks our principles, so I'm going to develop my knight and get ready to castle my king. Let's just develop the other knight. So moving the f-pawn is generally inadvisable. In most cases. Oh, and moving it twice, even more so. Now he's moved it from a square where it was defended by this dude to a square it's not defended at all. Which is just weird. Okay, so a couple of ideas. d3, even d4, potentially, because it's defended by knight and queen. So d4 is an idea, threats of this. Or I could just castle. Let's just castle for now. Keeping things very simple. I'm trying to use just principles in chess. I'm not trying to do anything too smart or advanced. Now, this is a useful learning point. This knight is pinned, as we have already established. And he's moved the pawn forward again from a square. No, I'm not going to do a draw, right? He's moved the pawn forward to a square where it is actually not defended, because a piece that's only protected by a pinned piece is not protected at all. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to play... I could just capture the pawn. I'm going to play d4. Oh, and we have a resignation. Oh dear. Well, hey-ho. Time for another game. So at least, he figured out that he'd messed up and he resigned, so that's fair enough. Put my glasses on to look cleverer. Let's see if we can get another 10-minuter. Okay, and e4 again. So my opponent here is rated 696 and has opened with the king's knight. So, I mean, the temptation here, this is the Petrov defense, or the Russian. The temptation is to push forward with the pawn, with tempo, and make the knight move. But we are playing with principles, so I'm going to do this. So now this is looking more like the modern defense. So he wants to fianchetto his bishop here and play that. So let's just carry on. d4 to control the center. And now it's very tempting to push that, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to develop my bishop. Let's put my bishop here. And now the other knight, why not? And then we want to think about what we're going to do. Now, this modern approach, you can see that Black has not moved his central pawns. Right, now he's attacking this pawn, it is defended once. So with the modern, the idea is that Black's going to contest the centre later on, possibly even with a double bishop fianchetto. Okay, if he's thinking about that, I'm not concerned. I can just counter that. So I'm going to put my queen behind my bish and try and come in and dislodge this guy. Probably then castle long and just throw Gary and Harry up the board to go and cause mischief. There we go. Let's castle. So my opponent here rated 696 has learned his opening. This is very common, but I really do think that below 1000 you will be better off. So, okay, let's figure out this. You'll be better off playing according to principles rather than trying to learn an opening. Okay. If I push now, the knight could come here or here. There it could harass my bishop. I'm not too concerned about that. In fact, if I fix my pawns here and lock them off against black's pawns, my pawns will be on light squares, so my bishop actually becomes less good. So let's go ahead and do this. I have actually completed development in 8 moves again, which is excellent. If he wants to come here, that's fine. I'm not worried about this pawn because the knight defends. And if he wants to trade his knight for that bishop, I'm going to let him. He can also take this knight, in which case I recapture with Gary, but then we get a semi-open file pointing straight at His Majesty. No, oh dear. I was just about to open my mouth to say no signs of blunders yet. And then look at this. The bishop has no squares. So this move actually wins material. And that was, yeah, it was unforced. I mean, you know, he had 2 squares here he could have moved back to. This one, just not good. I mean, would you expect somebody at the absolute beginner level to be able to spot the trap? Well, it's there on the board, guys, to see. Maybe not, but it's not all over anyway. I hope we don't get another resignation. That would be terrible. So this is the Breaking 700 episode. Oh, hang on. Oh, I missed a move. Okay. So he's captured. I'm just going to recapture. The joy of free stuff. This pawn is now attacked. This bishop is now attacked. If I put my bishop there, it's actually attacked twice. There's not much I can do about that. It can't go here, here, or here anyway. So I'm thinking I'm going to put my rook in line with the king. Just generally principle. I could move my knight to here as well. That's also an idea. Oh! This is okay. I thought he had a clever fork there, that he's tempting my queen to take there, and then he captures his bishop with a fork. But no, he's realised his blunder and resigned. Is this going to be a theme today? Let's pick a new opponent. So we've had 2 resignations already, but you know, basically that's what you get. And look, we've got white again. I'm going to play e4 again. Alrighty, e4, e5. Well, let's play normal. Normal chess. I'm going to say, if you're under 1000, I do not recommend that you play gambits. Because you might pick up some cheap points. Wow. But it's not going to teach you to play the best chess. Alright, so this is the Ruy Lopez, or the Spanish game. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then this bishop coming out here to attack the knight. I'm not going to trade off at this point in time. I'm not under any threat. This pawn, yes, is pinned on d2, but I can just now go ahead and castle my king to safety. Seems absolutely fine. So I'm going to be sitting here. I'm going to play normal moves. Okay, this pawn is now under attack and undefended, so I've got 2 options really. Rook here or d3, not both, But knight c3 is not great because the bishop can remove the knight and then my pawn again is undefended. So I'm going to push d3. Then my bishop might come out and pin this knight against the queen. That's a thought. Okay, my opponent has castled. Let's do what I said. Develop the bishop with a pin. It's worked before. It might prompt my opponent to push h6. Alright, so what's he doing here? He's threatening this knight I can recapture with the queen, and that gives me quick development, right? He's threatening this pawn, yeah, but not really. He is threatening this bishop here. Now if I take, he can recapture with the pawn, that does double his pawns, slightly weakening. Do I want to allow him to take my bishop, or do I just drop my bishop back? Well, I don't want to allow him to take the bishop, obviously. Well, I could defend it with a pawn, but that's just a bit silly. So I've got two options really. Bishop here, lining it up with the king, or take out the knight and double his pawns. I think I prefer this. With the idea that I want to keep stuff on the board and I want to create threats. And this is a potential threat. It means that this pawn here on f7 is now in an absolute pin. It cannot move. This knight is in a pin, a relative pin. But if this knight moves, the queen falls. Oh, and the other thing I see as well now is that we have a c3 with a potential fork. Basic tactics, one move tactics is all you really need to be focusing on at this level. So he's attacking my bishop. I have the potential of this. Now I could just drop my bishop back. I think I'm going to do that because it maintains the pin on the knight. If he kicks me again, I can come back here and that pawn's undefended, so what's not to like? See, I don't want to resolve the tension on the board. A lot of beginners are desperate to eliminate any tension. Now we just drop back here. Now this pawn's hanging. But he has another threat here that he hasn't spotted. And can you see, now black has really weakened his king side. But this is the big threat. Yeah, beginners are far too quick to, in fact I've got two attackers on that pawn. Far too quick to want to defuse all tension on the board. And really I have done nothing smart here at all. What I'm doing is I'm playing solid moves based on sensible principles, and I'm waiting for my opponent to bugger up, which he has already done. And I find that your opponents will bugger up at any level. I'm now like 1850 on my normal Lichess account, 1638 on chess.com, and you know, you get blunders at that level. Absolutely. All the time. Not necessarily a blunder in every game, but okay. Now, he's attacking my bishop, but I can now grab this pawn and attack his knight straight back. If he captures my knight, I can recapture with the queen, and I'm all right, so I think this is okay. I've identified undefended piece that's under attack, i.e. hanging, and I've gone ahead and captured it. That's our principle. Right? My opponent has not spotted that, and he also still, it appears, has not spotted that he is at risk of a pawn fork on b4 and d4. And this is a pattern, right? This is a kind of pattern that you should be starting to look out for. And I've already said I can capture with the queen. I'm now attacking this knight. Can't go there. If he goes there, I can capture with the bishop and then again with the queen, winning a pawn. If he goes here, That loses the knight because I've got two attackers. So I'm thinking here I just drop the bishop back. Could even drop it back here. I could ignore it entirely and just take the knight. And then take this pawn. So how do we feel about that? If I come here, he might play c5 and hit me again, but then I guess I can just drop back to here. Okay, let's keep him on the board. Let's keep wood on the board. Your knight is still hanging. So these are the kinds of things that you have to be spotting at the beginner level. At the very least, identify any piece on the board that is undefended. That's undefended, that's undefended, that's undefended, right? I can now do this in a glance, usually. And then later on, you'll be starting to look for example, okay, is there a way that I can attack this and this? Because they're both undefended. Well, maybe like queen here, but no, that square is now attacked by my opponent, right? Oh, that's an interesting move. That's not a bad move at all. So he's pushed the pawn, which is now defended by the bishop, and it's attacking my queen. I can't capture. However, I can play, no, I can't play that even. So these squares are all out. That's out, out, out. So I have to drop back to here, here, or here if I want to save my queen. Unless I have a nice check, which I don't. I've got bishop takes here and then rook takes, and that's not good. So I think this is probably the square because it's attacking this undefended pawn. And this dark squared bishop can't do anything about it, because this actually trapped behind his own pawns now. I'm still threatening this. I'm also threatening this, and thereafter the knight. But these pawn moves, if you're going to throw pawns up the board, in general, you want to leave the one, particularly the pawn that's straight in front of your king, you want to leave that one alone if you can, as a general principle. And that's all we're doing. You know, we're just playing the general principles here. Not doing anything smart. And if I take this pawn, I'm actually also threatening mate, which is nasty. And so if queen takes h6, I'm threatening mate here, defended by the bishop, right? Also attacking the knight. And then black wants to be thinking, well, is there anything I can do with my knight? Can I put my knight here and defend? Well, no, because it's going to be attacked by bishop and queen, and defended only once by black's queen. So my opponent is already in a world of pain, entirely of his own making, and that is what you will find. It's just a question of who can play the most solid. Put your pieces on squares where they are defended, put your pieces on squares where they have scope, right? The more of the board that a piece can see, the more squares it's potentially removing from your opponent as options, but also the more escape routes it has, in case it's ever attacked. So you just want to play flexible moves. It ain't rocket science. We're up to 715. Should we push on and see if we can make 800? Well, that's interesting. Okay, so we have tension now between the queens. Should I trade queens? So in these situations, you have to say, okay, if I initiate the trade and pawn takes, that's scenario A. You've got pawns here. Kind of bad pawns. And I do have two very nice bishops here. Other alternative, if I let my opponent take, I could recapture with the bishop. Again, looking at that pawn. Or I could recapture with this f pawn. I think I'm okay with this. So I'm thinking now, let's just push c3 and add a little attackage of my own. So if queen wants to take here, I'll probably recapture with the bishop, keep my pawn solid. There's no reason to open up my king just because he's opened up his. Now this pawn's actually hanging now. I could take it with either one of these. I can also simply just take his bishop. If he captures here, I can just put my king on h1. That's no threat at all. Let's trade queens. Comes with check. He must recapture. If he moves his king away, he's a fool. Okay, he must recapture. And now I can simply have the bishop. That bishop, that's mine, that is. If he comes here, I can play king h1. I can also now just capture the pawn. So, which is best? King h1 using the pawn as a human shield, or capture the pawn, potentially opening up threats against my king. I think a beginner would capture the pawn, so that's what I'm going to do. And now I want to complete development. Move 17. In terms of material, I'm now a bishop and a pawn up because my opponent's just thrown them away. I didn't have to do that at all. And my bishops are monstrous. Okay, this is not a great move because it's now blocking off his bishop's access to my tender and sensitive bits. It also means if I put my pawn here that my pawn's now preventing his knight from going to this square. Again, I still want to develop my knights. I'm thinking probably now c3 here, come in here maybe. I've got checking squares there as well. Lots of options. I do quite like the lines on Lichess. He's down to 2.5 minutes now. So the name of the game here is not screwing up. I've got my next move in mind, but that does not mean that I'm going to play it mindlessly. I'm 100% going to pay attention to what my opponent does. Okay, my opponent's done nothing at all. So he's now looking with his rook at a semi-open file, but it's a pawn that's defended now actually twice. Okay, we have activity. Okay, this just wins a pawn, I think. Takes. If he recaptures, I recapture with the bishop. And this is what you tend to find. Remember, this pawn is still pinned. One minute 50. So here, the idea with this speedrun is we're not going to do any kind of intricate or complex tactical combinations. I just want to show you guys how simple and solid play is all you need to beat other beginners. And we're also spotting what are the typical mistakes. So I think this game is probably worth just reviewing. Now that just blunders the rook. Why? Blundered. See? And these mistakes just pile up after a while. It seems like people kind of lose their grip on the game somehow, and don't think I want to do that because that messes up my pawns here. He's down to a minute now. I think I might think about pushing that pawn, but that does restrict my own bishop. Maybe it's time to bring this rook into the game. It's the most useful file, the C file right now. I've even got this as an idea. Maybe rook a c1, and that blunders a knight. He's just throwing material at me now. Let's retreat to safety. Put my bishop here. Push a pawn. Makes my bishop a tall pawn. That's absolutely fine. Operation not lose is all we're doing now. And look at this bishop and look at this rook. Well, he's got nothing. He's got no play now. Now he's just throwing the stuff up the board. And that knight's protected. I said it was protected. Alright, let's bring my rook here. King can't go there. So if I play this, he's got that. That's a check. Might win a pawn. We shall see. And throw in a check. And we've won on time. All right. So let's just quickly review this one, because this was a better game. We have here a standard. Now, I don't know this move, but then I don't play the Ruy Lopez, so odd one. Okay, I castle. So he's not screwed up yet. Right, he's castled his king. Good. I develop with a pin. He comes in with a fork, I guess. And I decide to protect my bishop and line it up with my opponent's king. This is important because it means that this pawn on f7 is pinned for much of the game. Now he starts moving pawns in front of his king. He's blinked, right? He's lost his nerve. So we come back and yeah. So here, after my bishop here moves here, he should have noticed that this pawn is hanging, right? So that's a common mistake. It's just simply not spotting when your own pieces are hanging or your opponent's. So here we have a trade and another completely unnecessary pawn move. I mean, it's not a bad move because it hits my queen, but you know, I just moved my queen and now I have a slight attack here, you know. I don't trade off, I counter attack, and now he just loses material, right? This is when you've got a piece attacked, this is just not, this is not winning. I mean, if he comes here, I can just move my king, and all he's done is won a pawn, but he's going to lose a piece. So here I just decide to trade, double his pawns, win a piece, and it all falls apart from that point. So there you go. Shall we do one more? See what our rating is now. Good, and now we have black. Right, we're on 7-3-4. Okay, I'm going to play very normal stuff. I'm going to play e4, e5. Play knight out here to defend the pawn, because he's attacked that. And we have the Italian game. Now, there is always this kind of fried liver threat. So I'm going to play this, and right, and now in comes the knight, obviously. Now I can play this move. And he takes, and there's no Traxler here, but oh, and look what I missed. I missed that his knight was hanging. Well, well, well. Okay, so now we have a situation. His knight hangs, so does mine. And now we stop. Stopping should always be the first thing you do, right? Let's say I take his knight, he takes my knight, I take here, he has to move his rook there. Then I recapture the pawn and I've got nasty pawns. Option B, I save my knight, for example, move it there. Can I move my knight with a big threat? Not really. Okay, let's trade some stuff. Actually, he takes my knight, I take here. Whoa, 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 what? It's a hanging piece, dude. Hanging piece. Take the stuff. Take the stuff. Right, this pawn is pinned by my bishop. That was just weird. I mean, he moved a piece where it was hanging and I just didn't expect him to do it and I didn't notice. That stuff happens a lot. Right, do I want to move my knight here? If it gets kicked by this pawn, I can move it back here. And that's not a bad place for my knight. Okay, right, you've convinced me. Knight comes there. Bishop's guarding this square. I have this move as well. That's nasty. That would probably win the rook, because there's no other way to defend the checkmate threat. If his rook is still on f1, then this forces that move. Yeah, and he hasn't seen it. Okay, so I'm going to play this. And this is... brilliant. All right. Fantastic. Oh, what did I forget to do? Why did my opponent make that move? Well done. Well done, son. Okay, I am now going to rescue my bishop because principles. Right, when you're down in material, this is going to be instructive. When you're down in material, you want to keep your remaining material on the board. Fantastic. Okay, now my opponent here is 802 question mark, so might not have been on the site for a long time. So here f6, I'm kicking this bishop away. It means also that the bishop's no longer looking at d8, so I can castle my king, get to safety. And now we're going to have to play some chess. Okay, this is a counterattack. Nice to see. Could just drop back here. Could also just drop back here. I think that looks... Yeah, I want to keep it lined up with the king. We said that before in the previous game, so still you have a bishop under attack. Whenever you're playing against lower rated players, it's very easy to be complacent. Okay, saved his bishop. I could capture there, but oh, now he's looking at my bishop. Okay, therefore I'm going to take, right, this is instructive. Take with a knight or take with a bishop, right? If I take with a bishop, pawn takes, knight takes, I have a fork on queen and rook, right? If I take with a knight, pawn takes, I have a check that he can easily get out of. Okay, so I'm taking with the bishop. Even though I'm down in material, this is better, because I'm clawing a little bit back. Oh, good move. However, I now have g6, hitting the queen and the rook, and actually that bishop as well. Okay, queen can't go there, can't go there, can't go to any of these squares, can't go there. So what's she got? She's got these ones. Not this one. Okay. And that was one of the ones that we said she had. I'm down a queen for a knight. And in a minute I'm going to be down a queen for a rook if I do that, unless there's anything better. I don't think there is, so let's go ahead with that. And then I'm going to probably castle. Am I worried about this move with an attack on my knight? The knight's defending that. So maybe first I push. Attack this knight. Just try and get a bit of breathing space. Alright, now, oh, this is slightly problematic. Now I have to drop back here to defend this pawn. That's a bit of a pain. But then I have this and push. Okay. This is not too bad either. I'm going to move my king here. He has another check if he wants it. I can push my king up. So we have to play with a high degree of accuracy now at this point. What's he thinking? I'm going to push this, just to mean that take that square away from the queen. Okay, this pawn's undefended. I can go here, I think. It's pretty safe. Knight can't do anything scary. I may kick the bish, maybe put my bishop here, try and threaten this pawn. Why not? Even knight here as well. My opponent's got plenty of time. He's got 6.5 minutes on the clock, so he really should be making progress. Now what he needs to do here is to engage his rook. But instead he's moved his queen around. Okay, so I'm going to hit his bishop. I'm just starting to run out of squares. He can go there or there. He can also go there, which should force me to move my rook. Okay, let's move the rook then. If I take his knight, pawn takes, I get the bishop. What's the point of that move? Tricky one. Okay, I'm going to move the knight here. That attacks the pawn and as a discovery against the bish as well. And if he goes here, I may even trade the bishop off. Even though I'm still down in material, I do have a pair of rooks. That is not bad. Okay, he can't come in here because my knight defends. He can't come in here because my bishop defends. If I capture the pawn, he can come in there. So I'm going to kick the queen away, and then I might have won myself a bishop. Counter-attacking, as we've seen, is a dangerous idea. It can be very, very effective. But you've got to make sure that the piece you're counter-attacking with cannot itself be counter-attacked again. So now we win the bish. And now material is practically equal. But what's more important is he's got a rook still in the box here that isn't playing any part so far. I have two attackers on that, so I can actually even win the pawn now because my king is also attacking. Don't even have to move the bishop. If I capture that, I'm then attacking the knight, which will be undefended. So that actually equalises. And where's his knight going to go? Alright, let's hit the knight again. I really want to get my bishop off the back rank and connect my rooks now. Okay, where's this knight going to go now? Right, can't go there, can't go there, can't go there. If he goes there, he's got to go back here, really, hasn't he? And then I might just move the bishop there. I don't want to go trading off my bishop at this point, but I think that capturing with the bishop here, hitting the queen, is probably better. My opponent's now down on time. He's now down under 4.5 minutes. I'm just over 4.5 minutes. So I'm managing to keep things complicated enough to force him to stop and think. Now this forks the queen and the knight, and that would be very unpleasant. So he's got to be careful now. He really ought to move. Oops, I don't want to pre-move that. Now this is it's not a completely obvious tactic, but it's right there. Yeah? I'm attacking this pawn 3 times, and his queen and his knight are on the same diagonal. Okay, that's a decent move. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to capture the pawn, and I'm now threatening discovery, right, by the rook on the queen. Okay, now this wins the knight, simply outright, because now his queen hangs. So his queen has to move, and he's blundered his queen. Very easily done, as we've seen. Okay, now I can grab the pawn, then he can grab that pawn, so maybe not. Okay, he has to recapture the rook, and I'm going to be up Oh, he failed to recapture the rook. Alright, now he's attacking a pawn here. I'm going to save my rook. Now what do I want to do? Do I want to capture this, or do I want to come and attack this guy? I'm going to keep this pawn in front of my king. It's actually a guard. If he wants to put his knight there, fine. Could come here. I need to make sure I keep my king off that. Okay, well that's doing nothing at all, because that's his own pawn. I don't want that pawn. I'm not interested in that pawn. If I come here and he goes there with check, that's actually a fork. So I think I'll just grab this pawn. He's down to 3 minutes. Who'd have thought? A queen blunder, huh? I'm just making him think, that's all I want to do. So make life difficult. Okay, I don't see any major threats. He can put his knight there while they're defended by the pawn, but why? Now I've probably rooks on 7th and we'll come in and sweep up some pawns. Okay, I'll bite. I'll take it. Pawn takes, king takes. But it's pretty much a lost position now. I'm +9. I've got 4 more pawns and an extra rook. I'll just put my king here. Defends these. Not too worried about this pawn. If his rook goes here, I can actually checkmate with 2 rooks on the back rank. Oh dear. And that, you know, that's a kind of pattern that around 1000 you'll start to know. Okay, but let's see what. Well, in fact, he's got to move something now, so it's not going to stay like that. But we do have now check. King in the corner, check. Now, when the king has this many squares, you cannot checkmate with 2 rooks. But if his rook had still been on there, we could have done this, king back there, and then checkmate. But not on this occasion. Okay, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of having my pawn for free. So I'm going to move my king back. And the sun comes out. Alright, so now we still can't. Oh, yes, we can. There you go, because the rook's moved next to the king. Simple checkmate. There we go. We've earned ourselves 18 points. So that's, I think, probably enough for one day's speed running. Sailed a little bit close to the wind on that game. So what have we seen? You know, we've seen obviously hanging pieces. I think the biggest issue here for my opponent, if we go back, was losing his own queen. And this, you know, so he missed the pattern that the queen is lined up with with my rook, or my rook's lined up to his queen, and there's only one of my pieces in the way, which means that I control the discovery. So this was always a threat. So after I take here, he goes, oh look, free stuff. But he failed to scan the board, right? So on every move, what's undefended, what's under attack, what just changed, you know, if you work through those questions and say to yourself, this is what's changed on each move, it will massively help your game. Now, even at this point, you know, if he moved the queen to safety, he would have still lost his knight, and we'd have still had a game on. But from this point now, after that move, losing his queen, it's all over, and then failing to recapture the rook. Right? In end games, rooks are far more important than knights. So he 100% should have taken that, then maybe come in and take this pawn. Because actually his knight wasn't even under threat. His knight's defended by a pawn there. So he didn't have to move the knight away. So just, general lack of stopping and slowing down. Simple as that. Just try and emulate, if you can, the pace, the slower pace that I'm trying to maintain, even though I blunder my queen. Then I at least always calm down. Say what you see. Say what the board is telling you. Right. Then calmly and rationally decide what is the best move. Don't just snatch at a move. And this was definitely snatching at a move. Right? There was a much better move on the board. Pawn takes rook. And it was all over from that point. Okay, so thanks for following me on this speed run. Hope you've picked up one or two things, and I'll see you next time.